Thank you.
Is there a certain day of week once we do start moving classes that you do any pre-cal versus other classes for your prime time?
I just mix them up. I just
Okay.
let calculus and pre-cal come as needed.
Okay,
So,
perfect. I just wanted Meg to meet with you like once or twice before we decide for sure her skipping pre-cal. She's been teaching herself,
okay.
but
Yeah, for sure.
it'd
Just
be
have her
good for
stop
her
by.
to test that
Yeah.
a little bit.
You mind, I close off my prime time to just my students because when I wasn't, I was getting too many random kids.
Of
So you
course.
might sign her up for yours and then
Just send her up.
just send her up, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
The side. Where's the side?
Ryan, Gavin Reed. Piper here again. This is here. Caitlin Bates. Jessica Collins.
Played that Cocoon game.
Oh, yeah?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I gotta check that out. I forgot the name of it. I only talked about it once over break.
Yeah,
So.
it's just Cocoon. It's cool.
It's a puzzle game.
Yeah. It's pretty simple though.
I get hooked on puzzle games. I really need to finish up a couple before I start anything else though. I got too many that I'm close to beating, so.
Yeah.
Okay, before we start our quiz this morning, I'm going to give you a couple more minutes than I normally would, but I need you guys to make sure that you have your stuff turned in from this unit, since this is the assessment, and this would be your last chance to get points from this, but you've also been kind of disconnected from school, and you may not have been thinking about it as much. It's probably a good idea to go check in Google Classroom to see what you've turned in, what you haven't turned in. But 63 was the review. That's what really our only assignment last class. So that one was supposed to be turned in the Google Classroom, but I can still take it right now for full credit. So if you didn't put it in Google Classroom, you can still come give me the hard copy with your name on it, of course. But then anything else from 6-1, 6-2, anything we've done since we've come back from your December break, stuff that maybe you got half credit on because it was incomplete, but you went back and finished it. Anything you didn't turn in on time, but you went back and did it, you can still get half credit for being late. But just like last semester, I won't take late credit after we start the assessment. So if you need to double check that, take these minute or two to do that, and then you'll need a calculator. Caitlin's absent. Ryan's still missing. Piper's still missing. Reed. Okay, last call. Any other reviews or late work from this unit? Okay, so you need to clear off your desk. Calculator will be allowed. It's actually needed. You'll need to put your phones, smartwatches put away while you're doing the quiz. It is pretty short, but I still want to get you started to make sure that you get enough time. So on the top of the front page, we've got the formula that we told you would have to memorize. So make sure that you take a look at those. I have had students in the past use these formulas incorrectly. By that I mean they copy the formulas down wrong. But if you do that, I have to count the words incorrect. So just because we're providing the formulas for you, it's still on you to look at them and work with them correctly. So this quiz is 30 points, which, as you know, is really not that big. Most of our assessments this semester, like last semester, will be 100 points. But for today, this will be your first major grade, the only major grade in the grade book. So this will end up being temporarily 60% of your grade. So double check that you're using the right formulas. You're not missing a part of the formula when you're using it. Think about if the numbers make sense. If one number seems extremely big, you might check all of your work again. The only other thing I think is worth probably pointing out, it's written out in the directions, but really the only way we can give partial credit, so we expect you to do this, is to, of course, not only come up with the answer. So if you look at like questions 2, 3, 4, it says you get 2 points for the answer. But you also get 2 points for the formula with the numbers plugged in. So make sure that you're writing that down on your paper. Whatever you're typing in the calculator, hitting enter to get your answer should go on your paper as showing your work. So I'm only vocalizing that because if you just felt so comfortable with this, you go straight to the calculator, straight to the answer, and you don't write down your work, you don't write down the formulas with the numbers plugged in, you're really restricting how many points you can earn from each problem. Okay, of course, if you guys have any direction questions, feel free to ask. Also, feel free to take your time, double check your work, make sure your answers are realistic. There is one bonus question on the bottom of the back page from 6.1 that I told you if you wanted to learn the ambiguous case, you could do that, but you will have to show work for that. So if you think you know how to do that, feel free to. Give it a shot, but if you're just doing random guesses, I can't give you points. You have to have to work with it. Take a look and make sure there's nothing to turn in first. Okay, and then last thing, per usual, I'll keep up with who is still working. And when we're all finished, we can move on. You should have picked up 2 handouts on your way in today. So that's moving us into the next unit. And so we'll go through that worksheet today before you go as well. But it's, even though it's 2 pages, it's only like 11 questions. There's 10 or 11 questions. So. But if you forgot to pick them up, grab them after you turn in your quiz. first.
Can I solve for the bonus question? I think I know how to solve it.
Not now, not once you turn this in.
So later. Okay.
Okay, that is all of our quizzes. So, ones I've had time to grade look pretty good. You should be able to see those in gradebook here pretty shortly. Just like last semester, you will have to wait till they're all made up before you can come and see it during advisory. It's just like a test. We'll also add that this week was supposed to be no movement for advisory for CAP, so you guys can start signing up for your classes for next year. They've changed that to next week will be no movement with CAP, so the people who missed today won't be able to make their quiz up next week. It'll be the week after, so there'll be a little bit more of a delay before you guys can come and see yours. But again, they are looking pretty good, the ones I had time to get to, so hopefully you feel fine with that. The last thing I will say about this, I know I've said it several times, but that is all, that whole unit I had drug out. You know, we've only spent 4 class periods on it, but it drug out because of the snow. But we only do that for you for the ACT, and you, on the ACT, you have to be fairly familiar with the formulas to be able to recognize them. So even though you didn't have to memorize them for us, for the ACT, I would still put in some effort, especially if you know you're taking in a Saturday. You might look them over the Friday before, because it is a very common topic. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. So you should have picked up 2 handouts on your way in. Both of these together will make up handout 65. So if you didn't staple them together, you'll probably want to staple them together later. But again, there's only like 6 questions here, and I could probably answer all 6 of these questions in like 4 minutes. It's not that these take a lot of work, but this is our next topic, and I think a mistake that a lot of students fall into is that we space this out quite a bit so that there's not too much any one given day. But if you don't stay on top of that, or you just do the bare minimum and you're not really learning it, once the test rolls around, the test feels difficult. I think last year this was probably our lowest average test. It wasn't bad, but it was our lowest average test of second semester in this class. So keep that in mind. So this whole unit is about limits, which is the very first topic that we do in calculus. But when we do this in calculus, we spend like, I don't know, like 4 class periods and then test it. We'll spend more time on that because, again, we're not under the same pressures of an AP test. So the first, partly why we do it at this point in the year, though, is I know some of you guys are kind of on the fence about calculus, so it's good for you to actually see a little bit of real calculus. Everything we've done up to this point is pre-calculus, which means, you know, it's stuff that helps you in calculus, but it's not necessarily calculus itself. Limits is actually calculus. So the first distinction, you need to write just a couple notes here at the top of your page, is a lot of times, as many times as I say it and I try to bug you about it, people will mix up limits with points. A point means when x is this, we know y is that. When x is at 4, we know what the y value is. A very similar concept, but not the same thing, could be this. And what this is saying, as x gets closer to that number, so as x approaches 4, so not exactly at 4, as it gets close to 4, y gets close to or approaches what it's equal to. This one means this is exactly where it's at. When x is this, y is that. But with limits, the idea of the limit is what y value is it getting closer to as x gets closer to this. So as x gets close to 4, y gets close to 3. It doesn't mean that y is 3 when x is 4. That's a point. This is a limit. Okay, so really, today we're going to look at tables and graphs, and we're going to try to answer these type of questions. And again, we're just trying to describe what's the y value it's approaching as x approaches whatever this is. So, question 1, as x approaches 3 of this function, what is the limit? So I'm not asking you what is the y value when x equals 3. That would be talking about a point. A limit just wants to know what y value is it approaching. So on this one, we need to do a couple little notes here too, just at least once here. There's really two types of questions, and I don't remember if it's on this assignment or not, but if there's a little minus sign here, this means from the left. So as x gets closer to 3 from the left, so I pick an x value, I get a little bit closer to 3, a little bit closer to 3, a little bit closer to 3, and you need to see that the y value gets closer and closer and closer to -4. Now notice there's a hole there. It doesn't even exist at 3, -4, but I don't care. Limits don't care about points, they just care what is it approaching. So you might draw some arrows there to help you see that you're just really worried about what y value is it getting closer to. Or the question could be, what is the limit as x approaches 3, and if there's a little plus, I'm sure you could probably guess, this means from the right. Again, normally we don't need to write all of this, but we do have to think about it each time. So from the right means you would take a point to the right of x equals 3 and move it a little bit closer to x equals 3 and a little bit closer to x equals 3 and a little bit closer to x equals 3, and think about what y value does it get closer to the closer x gets to 3. And for this one, it's -4. And if it approaches the same number on the left and the same number on the right, then that is what the limit is. It has to approach the same number on the left and the right. If it does not approach the same number on the left and the right, we say that the limit does not exist. And that's it. As long as you really understand what limit's asking you to do, it gets close to -4 from this side, gets -4 to this side, so the answer is -4. You really don't have to do any more work than that. Okay, so now let's look at 5. Notice this doesn't have a plus or minus here, so this means both. It's got to be the same number from the left and the right. So from the left, as x gets closer to 5, it looks like the y value gets closer to -2. And from the right, as x gets closer to 5, looks like the y value gets close to -2, and then if it approaches -2 from the left and -2 from the right, the limit of that is -2. Again, it's not a point. I'm not asking you what is the y value when x is 5. There is no y value when x is 5. There's a hole there. Limits don't care about that. I know that seems like I'm saying that a lot, but a week from now, that's going to be something that you may be missing. It's very common to miss that. Okay, so as x approaches 0, so from the left, it looks like it gets closer to a y value of 2. From the right, it looks like it gets closer to a y value of 2. So the limit is 2. We're just describing the y value that it approaches as it approaches that x value. Okay, you tried this one. I'm going to have you try several of these with guided practice here, but just try this one for now. Try number 4. Now, as a multiple choice question, I can promise you there's going to be an answer of 4 on there. The answer to this is not 4. Remember, limits are not the same thing as points. In fact, what's not a terrible idea is when you're doing the limit as x approaches -1, it's almost like you could care less what's happening at -1. You shouldn't even be looking at this. I don't care if there's a hole there. I don't care if it's filled in there. I don't care if it's up here. I care what is it getting close to on the left and what is it getting close to on the right. From the left, it looks to be -3, and from the right, -3. So your answer should be -3. It has to be the same from the left and the right. Otherwise, we say it doesn't exist. Okay, on page 2, so we've looked at a lot of graphs, but these things can be asked in tables as well, which unfortunately you guys don't get a lot of practice with. But it's really the same idea. As x approaches -2 from the left, it looks like the y values are getting closer to, well, if it goes from 9.04 to 8.23 to 8.02, what do you think it's approaching from the left? Okay, probably 8. We don't know for sure, but it's a good guess. Then from the right, as we get closer to -2, closer to -2, closer to -2 from the right, do you see that the y values appear to be approaching the same number? Looks like they're getting closer to 8 as well. Well, if you're approaching 8 from the left and 8 from the right, then your limit is 8. Okay, I would like you to try 6, 7, and 8. So I want you to try the table on number 6 without me telling you what to do, and then try 2 graphs, 7 and 8. Again, I'm not going to give you a ton of time, because really, if you know what you're supposed to be looking for, these are about 10-second questions. There's very little work to be done. let's see how you did. Okay, so this time we cared about what y value is being approached as x approaches 1. So from the left, that's when x values are slightly less than 1. So as I get closer to 1 from the left, it looks like the y value is getting closer to, I don't know, probably -6. It has to approach the same thing from the right though. So to figure out what it's approaching from the right, you have to take an x value bigger than 1 and then work towards the left so you get closer to 1, and it appears that the y values are getting closer to -6. So if you're approaching the same thing from the left and the right, left and right, then that is your limit answer. Number 6 should be -6. Okay, from 4, I verbalized this one, but we did not do any of these together, so this is a little bit easier to miss. As x approaches 4, again, I don't care what's happening at x equals 4, I'm caring what's happening as you get close to x equals 4. So from the left, it appears that it's getting closer and closer to a y value of 3, but from the right, it's getting closer and closer to a y value of 6. So if, and you probably should write this on your paper, if it said, what is the limit as x approaches 4 from the left, your answer could be 3. When I say left, that little negative looking exponent means from the left. If it had said x approaches 4 from the right, the answer would have been 6. And sometimes that comes up. We'll see some of that in this unit. But if it doesn't say left or right, this implies it has to be both. If it's not approaching the same thing from the left and the right, we say that this limit does not exist. And you can use the abbreviation DNE if you want to. Number 7 does not exist. Because if I just try to sum it up and say what y value is it approaching as x approaches 4, it depends on what side you're looking from. Some people can't say 3 and some people say 6. We need to be talking about the same thing. It's got to be approaching the same number from the left and the right. So again, I verbalized that one, but I wanted to throw it at you to see if you caught it on your own. Okay, and then number 8 was the same idea. From the left, it approaches 5, but from the right, it approaches -5. If it doesn't approach the same from the left and the right, and it doesn't say left or right, it's got to be both. If they're not the same thing, then it does not exist. We can't say definitively what y value is approaching because it depends on what side you're coming from. Okay, any of those from page 2 you'd like to ask anything specific about? Okay, then take a moment and try the last 3 on the last page, 9, 10, and 11. 11 kind of ask it backwards, so there's a few different answers you can come up with 11, but I want you to see if you can. I want to see what you come up with. Also, we'll check these answers, and I will ask you to turn this in before you go. We still got about 16 minutes of class, so there'll be plenty of time. But please take my advice and try to summarize this in a sentence or 2 and write that out to yourself. From the last couple years that we've been doing this, students feel great about day 1, and then they feel great when we do day 2, and they feel great when we do day 3. But then when the test comes around, it's the lower average. So write yourself a reminder of what was not intuitive to you or what traps you think you might fall in a few weeks from now. let's make sure that you got these correct and give you a chance to ask questions if you need to. So, -4 doesn't say from the left or from the right, which means it has to be both. So from the left, it appears to be approaching a y value of -3, but from the right, it appears to be approaching a y value of 2. Not the same, so you have to say it does not exist. Oh. I kind of remember this from last year. I really should probably scramble these up, but so -5 would be right here. Again, I could care less what's happening at x equals -5. You could just ignore all of that, but it's getting close to, I don't know, 7 maybe from the left, and maybe -4 from the right. Doesn't matter because they're not the same thing, so it does not exist. Okay, and then to kind of ask it backwards, I'm telling you the limit equals 3, and I'm asking you what could x be approaching. So, since here's y equals 3, it looks like it, and you kind of have to estimate here. One acceptable answer would be at right here, from the left and the right, at about -8.5. That would be okay. That has a limit of 3. But also, maybe at 2, as x approaches 2, it's got a y value of 3, or it's approaching a y value of 3 from the left and from the right, so that would be an acceptable answer. Or even, let's say 4. As x approaches 4, the y value is approaching 3 from the left and the right. So any one of those should be fine. Obviously the -8.5 is just an estimation, but many places where the limit could be 3, but it has to be the same from the left and the right. So again, we try to make this easy for you guys by dividing it into very manageable pieces, much more smaller and much more manageable pieces than you get to do in calculus. But don't let it build up. If there's something you're not understanding today, circle those questions, make yourself some hints, write yourself an explanation or two. It should really be helpful. I mean, I always recommend that to you guys, but of all units we do, this would probably be the big one. So, all right, so y'all still have 11 minutes, but I do want that turned in. So as long as I have it before next class, which would be Monday, I guess you'll still get full points on that, but no reason not to go ahead and turn it in now. So go ahead and scan that in the Google Classroom, and then you should have a few minutes to yourself before you're dismissed.